Awesome. Welcome, Steady, to our March Madness interview. I'm excited to have you and I'm excited to see your videos for this week. So just to start out, I'm curious, how are you doing and where are you at these days?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm great. I'm in the DC metro area, hanging out, working mostly from home. I go into the office about 2 days a week. Um, Quarantine's been crazy, but it's been good all around. I hung out in Vermont for a few months, I guess more than a few months. I was there for 5, I think, over the summer, swimming and fishing a lot when quarantine happened. I figured it was good to get away from the city and, and people really. So I hung out there, and then work was like, okay, you got to come back. It's time. So now I'm back in the DC area and hanging out here. Yeah.
Nice. That sounds like not a bad place to spend a couple months, especially when you have like access to the outdoors and
hmm
can do that, when the world's kind of shut down. So that's where you grew up?
Yep. I grew up in Vermont. I lived almost 20 years there, went to school there for 3 of those college years. Then after college, I went to Washington State, hung out there across the country. I'd never been to the West Coast, so I hung out there for a little bit and then did another coast switch over to the East when I grew up and decided it was time to get a job. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you spent any time in Washington State. Were you traveling around and stuff, or what were you doing in Washington?
So my mom and stepfather moved out there, and I had never been to the West Coast, so I went over there just to start to travel, and I didn't really have any plans. Did a cross country road trip with my siblings, which was awesome. And they're so I don't know if you've ever done a cross country road trip, but they're really strange in terms of the emotions that they bring to you.
Yeah.
There's a longer story in there, but we'll skip it for now. So I went to Washington State, and I ended up finding this retired DoD guy who built his own blueprints for his yacht, and he was building it by hand. Really smart guy. So I ended up just totally random, just staying with him and his wife and working on his boat with him for months at a time, and traveling when I could. And yeah, just hanging out doing that. And then I was exploring that whole area, hiking a ton every day I could. And then finally started applying to places when I realized I had done enough exploring and it's time to get serious. And then I loved my interview out here on the East Coast, so I traveled back here. Yeah.
That's an incredible story. I had never heard that before, and I'm so glad I asked about that because, like,
Yeah.
what a crazy thing, right? To like go cross country. I've done a cross country trip because I was a teacher, so I had all my summers off. So I did like 6 weeks of one summer going out west, like swinging up to Washington,
hmm
Seattle, and then
hmm
coming back. I crossed the border for just a hot second there into Victoria Island in British Columbia
Beautiful.
and then came back. But I can definitely relate to those like ups and downs.
hmm
And then this that's cool to like work on a yacht, like and just like help build that from scratch. Like not a lot of people are doing that these days, but like the knowledge to kind of go through and understand like how everything's put together and how to make it seaworthy and then how to make it,
Yeah.
people able to live in it and so on. That's incredible.
Yeah, it such a weird scenario, right? To find a retired guy that built his own thing and was actually following through with it, and to end up just connecting with him and and staying there and having those long days. I don't know. It kind of seems like it didn't happen. It seems like it was a book or a movie I read about or something. It was, yeah, strange.
That's
Yeah.
cool. So we talked a little bit about your family, but I was just curious, like, how did you get into hockey and what kinds of hockey do you play?
hmm Yeah, great question. So I grew up in Vermont. My dad taught me how to skate when I was young. Almost as soon as I could walk, I was on skates. My whole family, brother, sister, played. dad played, uncles played, a grandfather played. So just a big hockey family, and I just loved it. I started with ice hockey. Played high school, played college. Just there wasn't any sport that gave me the feeling of it's an indescribable feeling when you're on the ice and you're, playing and vibing with your teammates, and it's just indescribable. And then I got out of college, super bummed. Those 4 years were over, and for women at the time, wasn't a ton of opportunities to do anything further, and at least for me, there wasn't. And then I found out about ball hockey through a friend, through I think there was a tournament up in Philly. And I was like, sure, I know nothing about ball hockey. I guess the rules are kind of similar. I'll try this thing out. And tried it out, just instantly fell in love. It was the first time that I felt that like same feeling that I felt on the ice of like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this indescribable feeling. It's like, community and fun, and it's hard, and it's all the things meshed into one. And I felt that with ball hockey, so my love transferred over. So just ball and ice now, but there's actually a mix of both here in the city, here close to DC, which is awesome. There's ton of rinks everywhere.
Nice. Yeah, it's incredible, the feeling between, like, it's slightly different because I played ice as well, slightly different ice and ball, right? The feeling of skating versus running, but that like feeling of like being in the moment and being in the flow is like totally there. Being in that community as well. I think the ball hockey community is slightly unique and special in a lot of ways, and that's one of the things that's really kept me going with ball hockey as well. You said you have a brother and a sister. What's the order of the siblings?
Yeah, my brother's the oldest. I'm middle child. I definitely feel that. Shout out to all the middle children out there who have been, I'm just kidding, mom, dad. And then I have a younger sister. So my brother is in Vermont and my sister is in Washington State. So okay. really split, yeah.
Yeah. Do you play any other sports?
In high school, I did. I played soccer, tried out lacrosse, did a little softball here and there. But that's pretty much it. They kind of stopped after high school, but I was always told growing up as a kid that it was really important to diversify and play, those different sports if you wanted to get good. Yeah, it just makes you more all-around athletic and understand different ways of thinking, because all sports are very different. So not very much anymore. I want to learn how to golf, but have to make it.
Golf is a sport you can play forever too. It's hockey, I think you could play for a long time as well, but golf could be a future learning as well.
Oh yeah.
It's like get outside. It's in some ways golf, because I actually played golf up through college, and it gets you outside similar to hiking. Like it gets you outside for like 6 hours a day. And there's nothing, it's pretty exciting to just kind of like be on a course and play for a long time.
Yeah.
So you talked about that, like all around athleticism and just like the ability to kind of like be a diverse athlete, and you definitely are. I've had the privilege of playing with and against you, and you're so athletic. You played ice hockey up through college, and then you played for Team USA in international tournaments. So I was curious, from the ball hockey perspective, what's it like playing for Team USA in an international tournament?
Oh my gosh. I've used this example, twice now, so I feel ridiculous saying it, but it's just indescribable. There are so many amazing things about it. The growth that we've seen in the women's ball hockey world, to start, has been incredible throughout the few years that I've been involved. The first year was 2017, and the second year was 2019, and I remember receiving a letter. I think our whole team received it in our inboxes from one of the girls that had been to development, like just a scrimmage or a practice or something, and she must have been 6 years old or something. But she wrote this adorable letter to our team that, you know, she's inspired and can't wait to grow up and be like us. And that was, I just read that letter and I wanted to do so well for her. I wanted to break those barriers and keep pushing forward. And I think receiving that letter to our team, I think it motivated all of us and made us excited and wanting, you know, to push forward and harder than we had been. You know, I think the way it sits right now at an international level, there's obviously more boys countries that are involved than you know, countries on the women's side. And you know, as we can continually motivate, you know, girls not even only in the US but outside in other countries, I just want to continue to do that because I think it's really important. I think it offers and provides things that, you know, you can't get from anything else. And so to see that growth has been incredible and amazing, and I feel so lucky to be able to say that, you know, I get to be a part of that. I hope to, you know, continually be able to provide opportunities for girls to get involved so that can continue the growth of the sport in general. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, like you said, it's hard to describe, you know, what it's like being there. But the way that that you feel when you're there and the way that like others kind of get inspired by that is really cool. I can also remember just people watching and sending notes too. Like, you know, it's not televised by any means, but it's like people are watching you from afar and cheering you on, which is just really cool, a cool feeling. I mean, you kind of came on the ball hockey scene and really made like a huge impact on the team as well. You know, you scored some incredibly important goals, everything from just goals in like the play-in games to goals in like our semifinal game against Team Canada to put us to win that game 3-2. Like how does it feel to be like in that role where you're also where you're coming on the scene and playing, but also coming on the scene and making a huge impact on the scoreboard and in the locker room?
Yeah, great question. I think the locker room is often not what people talk about, and I think it's probably one of the most important roles that there is. I think, you know, it's great when you're on the rink and when you're putting up points on the scoreboard, that feels like, hey, everything I've done up to this point, you know, is being rewarded and I'm helping the team get here and here. But it's really the locker room where everything is formed. You know, it's your positive attitude throughout. It's keeping everyone engaged and involved and included. And I've seen that area in particular make or break teams and people. And I think it's undervalued. So I really appreciate you saying that. You know, I was a big part of both because it's really important. And I think it's something that, you know, we often don't always think about, but you know, it's just an important reminder that you're not alone in this, right? You have, you know, 26 or how many people standing by your side that, you know, you need to focus on them as well. It's the sum of the parts, right? Yeah.
That is an important piece. And I mean, I've had the privilege of playing on these, you know, 2017 and 2019 with you. And there's an element of like your personality study where you kind of like bring folks together and you make people feel like they have like really strong connections. I mean, sometimes in our teams, the first time you meet someone in person is like at the international tournament, but you have a way of like bringing everyone together and bringing everyone in. So I was curious, like, where does that part of your personality like come from? Is it just something unique to you? Is it something that your family values? Like, where does that come from?
That is such an interesting question. Yeah, I feel like I try to. I'm my best self when I'm passionate, and what motivates me or makes me passionate is when I hear like a story or something, I hear a story that hits home for me or that can, inspire me. And so I try to, in a team environment, or when I'm like, say, briefing at work, or doing something as little as like showing analysis, I try to make that into a story, because stories really impact people and they really hit home. I mean, stories are everywhere, and when you read a good story, you can really, you have physical reactions to stories. You can get goosebumps if you hear something really good, or you can, feel sick to your stomach if you see a dog being abused. And I think I know what it feels like to be really impacted by both good and bad stories. So I try to understand how folks react to those things, and I try to take those lessons and use them in my own world.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about that impact of stories, and like every team has a story too, right? Like every team kind of like makes their story as they go along. Like I can think through some of our US teams as well, and just like the challenges that we faced. I think in 2017 we were down like by a goal almost every game and came back to tie it up and win quite a few of them. So there's also even like that team story of like we can still do this, like, and you keep telling yourself that the whole game and the whole tournament, and you can get some really cool results out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious. So we're in a pandemic, and we've had good glimmerings of openings and closings and so on for a year now. And I was curious, have you ever dealt with a long stretch of not playing hockey, current, either like we're in now or in the past? If so, how did you deal with it, or how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, great question. I have had a ton of long stretches where I have not been playing hockey. I'm actually in one right now. I'm in my 5th month, almost 6th month. I have a herniated disc in my neck. I've had a few accidents that have resulted in surgery. So, cumulative, there have been years of my life where I've not played. And I think it's just, finding, I don't want to say substitutes, but finding those things that you can spend your time on that, bring you some of the same energy and bring you some of the same happiness. I would say lately for me, that's been, learning new hobbies and getting into new things. I've been big into, trading on the stock market, and I've been, trying to learn new hobbies, and I can't run right now. So I've been walking a ton and endless walking, which is really exciting and happy, and makes me happy. So it's just altering slightly where your head is at, and kind of redefining your definitions. I think, we become so solidified in our identities sometimes. And if that's taken away from us, if sports takes that away from us, we often have an identity crisis. And I think it's learning about really what your identity is. And that means like, how do I react to these things? Am I flexible, or am I, going to just be miserable throughout this injury? It's really like your mindset when these scenarios happen. Sometimes there's uncontrollable events in our life, like COVID, for example. COVID is an injury for a lot of people. They can't play, right? And it's terrible. It's taken, a toll on mental and physical health for a lot of people. And it's just, how can we be flexible in the current state to not have this totally alter our identities, have this build on us. Like, let's show our strength in this by being flexible and by being able to make slight changes. And that's probably throughout my life, I've had to make a lot of those small changes. So I'm getting better at it. I will say it's not, I do still get upset about those things, of course, but, just acceptance and then flexibility is how I've really been able to get through those times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think through some of those has your identity changed as a player as well as outside of hockey, or mostly just like overall kind of like out like as a person versus like here I am as a hockey player as well?
Attitude wise, absolutely has changed. On the rink, it would be harder to say, I think. But attitude in terms of effort and rebound, how quickly you rebound from something, and team environment, chemistry, attitude absolutely has changed me for the better. Um, yeah, I think I hope that's changed me for the better on the ice as well. I don't have the perfect example of that. Maybe after COVID happens and we all get back out there playing, I'll have a better example for you there.
And I also wonder too, like, how do you, because you value the, that locker room time and that team time and so on. And sometimes when you can't physically play, but you're still part of that team, you're there in the locker room, you're there on the bench, you're there like, supporting your team, and that can be just as important. Have you had situations like that where you're still, in that team atmosphere, but not able to like physically contribute?
Yeah, actually, there was one of my injuries was my senior year of high school, and it was right before the school year started. I had been in an accident and torn my ACL and done a lot of terrible things to my body, which took me out for the year. And I started, wanting to go to the games and support the team. And it was just, that was my first time really going through something like that. And that time was probably the time where it shut me down. I wasn't able to, be there for the team and support the team. And that was the last time that it shut me down. Since then, any injury, I realized the impact and probably the negative impact that it had on the team then and there. And if something like that happens to you, I do have regrets about leaving and not supporting the team at that time. I think if I had the strength then, I would have loved to do that, but I didn't. And that was probably the time that taught me, to be flexible and to accept these scenarios. And yeah. So going forward, there have been times where I haven't been able to play and tried to remain positive during that time. But again, it's something that's so underrated and it's so important. I can think of a few women off the top of my head who have made the team by their positive attitudes when in times like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really interesting perspective. I can relate as well. I think I had like a 6 to 9 month injury that was like really hard to come back from, and but that was in my like early 30s, and so I can imagine being like a high school student and trying to deal with that. It was hard, in my 30s to deal with that, and to be there on the bench and to be there supporting. And there were, moments of like really just like breaking down and not being okay, and then like getting back and being okay. But that journey it teaches you so much through it. And I think I came back stronger, and hopefully with your current injury, you'll come back stronger. And I'm sure you've come back stronger from your previous times as well.
Thanks, Karen.
I'm curious, Steady, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Ooh, I love being up early. I'm just not very good at it. Lately I've been getting up early and just, hanging out in bed for 30 minutes or so. I'd say morning person, even though my body disagrees.
Nice. And do you have either like a morning routine, or like a when you were able to train, like a morning training routine then?
I've been throughout my life just not flexible at all. So lately, get up in the morning, get coffee, let the dogs out, feed the dogs, eat almost instantly, have to eat instantly. After I've had some food, I will just stretch and do yoga. That's what I've been really trying to get better at lately. I think it's really important.
I remember your like very out of control hunger steady.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm super inflexible as well, and I've been trying to mostly in my like hip area, and I've been trying to kind of work on that as well. Do you feel like the yoga and stretching is working?
I do. I think you have to be fairly consistent. Um, and that probably would be where I've, gone astray in the past. I think consistency is what has killed me there. So I'm trying really to do that every day now. And I think it's, I think if you committed 10 or 15 minutes to it in the morning and the night, you would really see those results. And I think you'd see them reflect as well in your injury recovery and along those lines.
Do you have any yoga like videos that you recommend?
A lot of people have been using apps. I've been using YouTube. There are just a ton of YouTube channels. You can find anything from a 10-minute quick yoga stretch to, hour-long videos. I used to go there's a yoga facility down the street pre-COVID. I was hanging out there. And then when COVID took off, I started on YouTube, and then I'm working up to creating just kind of my flow, which is something where I get up in the morning and, don't check out a YouTube video, but I just do my general practice.
That's really cool. I'm a yoga with Cassandra girl myself. I've been doing like 10-minute or 10-minute videos.
Love that.
Cool. So tell us about your week of stick handling. What are people in for?
Yeah. You're in for fun. I think day 3 and 4, I think it'll throw everyone for a loop. It works on really like separating the feet from the hands. Many times if you're running down the rink and you're taking a shot, you might stop moving your feet while you're taking that shot, or vice versa, right? If you're stick handling, you might not be moving your feet, and you should be moving your feet. So it really tries to separate out those things, and there are a few exercises that I think Connor McDavid originally did them. I was watching some training videos of him a while back, and he had done these really cool stick handling drills where essentially you put 2 sticks down and they act as a ladder, and you stick handling in the middle, but have separate, really work on separated movements from your hands and your feet. So this would help, make sure you're not shutting off one of those while you're working on the other. I think that's a really important and underutilized thing. So I think that'll be where I see the most challenge. It's I recommend if you do struggle with day 3 and 4 to really, start them both separately. So work on the movement, get the movement down before you involve the stick handling. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what everyone else has too for the rest of March.
Those get a 3 Croc rating.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Love those. So there's a lot of people that have been staying at home quite a bit and or maybe just trying to get back into that habit. I think the yoga is a good example of saying like, I'm going to do this every day for 10 minutes and I'm just going to try to make it into a habit. So I was curious, what advice do you have for folks who are trying to keep their stick handling up despite not being able to play as often, despite being home, so much?
Get a buddy. Have a buddy. Even if you can't be with your buddy all the time, text them, wake up at the same time, be like, hey, let's do this together at 8 a.m. And after, we can tell each other or text each other, or call each other, or tell, email, whatever it is, how it went for you. Because I think in COVID, it's something that's, kept us all away from each other. But really, people are motivating, and it's motivating to have a buddy, especially for me in my own world, if I'm trying to stay active and stay involved.
I mean, that's such good advice, right? Like it's an accountability thing, it's like a motivation thing, and then it's just like way more fun to do it with someone else and be like, oh, that crazy drill that Steady did, well, I had to put my feet outside the stick, it was really hard. I love it.
Yeah.
So Steady, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh my gosh. What advice? Is this hockey related advice? No.
Take it however you'd like. It could
Oh
be
my
anything.
gosh. This is kind of a cool question. I think when I was 20 years old, I had a very small worldview. And as I'm I'm 26 now, the world is so big and it's so exciting, and there's so many things beyond this moment. Don't forget about those things, and know that you'll have your moment to try those things and explore those things, and just try to live in that present moment. I had recently heard a cool quote that resonated with me. I can't remember it exactly, so I'm gonna butcher it slightly. But it was something along the lines of, there's no moment other than the present, because the future and the past, like the past is a memory really, and it's how your mind interprets that memory. And the future hasn't happened, so it's just such an important reminder that this present moment, whatever life curveballs, whatever you get, whatever happens to you, like that moment and how you react to that moment matters. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And one final question. I was just curious, what is something that you're really grateful for?
Oh my gosh. I think I am grateful as I'm fifth month of this injury. I am grateful for my health. As a younger athlete, it's easy to get cocky and not want to do these things like stretching and taking care of your body, not only in a physical manner, but the foods that you intake. It's so easy to get cocky about your body and your physical health, but I am grateful that I can, get up every day and get out of bed and dress myself and do all these things. I've been learning and researching and recently heard about, just folks who aren't maybe in that situation, and how, it isn't ideal for everyone, and we all aren't born with the same circumstances. And I just think that it's something underappreciated, right? Getting up out of bed every day, looking back, it's probably the most important thing to me in the world, having that independence. So yeah.
Awesome. I mean, thanks for sharing that. I think you have a nice way, just in your general life of being grateful, and then also connecting with others to show like what we can all appreciate about life. So I want to ask you that question specifically because I think you do a good job of that just in general, in when you interact with teammates and when you interact just in life. So thanks for that, and thanks for putting up your videos, for stick handling, and for being here today. I really appreciate it, Steady.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Karen. I humbled that you asked, so appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Steady.